Welcome to The Explainer. We're about to dig into a fascinating piece of history that's kind of hiding in plain sight. It's a centuries-old family story out of New Mexico, and we're going to turn it into a visual journey that, I promise, you won't forget.
So here's the question we're tackling today. How does a really unique New Mexico surname connect to this huge, beautiful public park? We're going to unravel a historical mystery that links a one-of-a-kind family name, Gurulé, to the famous Elena Gallegos open space in Albuquerque. And believe me, it is a story that jumps across continents, cultures, and even centuries.
All right, let's dive in. And you might be surprised to hear that our story doesn't actually start in New Mexico. Nope, we have to go all the way back to 17th century France to meet a young man whose incredible, almost unbelievable journey of survival would end up creating a whole new identity, not just for him, but for generations of people after him. So this guy, Jacques Grolet, his early life reads like an adventure novel filled with one disaster after another and somehow these improbable survivals. Just look at this timeline. In 1684, he's just a young guy leaving France on this big colonizing mission, which, completely falls apart. So what does he do? He deserts. He ends up living with the Tejas Indians. Then, in a wild turn, he writes this letter to the Spanish asking for rescue, but when they find him, they throw him in prison. It's just crazy. Finally, in 1692, he gets out and somehow makes his way back to the New World, eventually heading to New Mexico with a brand new name, Santiago Gurulé. What a journey.
And you really get a sense of how much he changed from this quote. It's from one of La Salle's lieutenants who actually found him. He describes seeing a man stark naked with a bow and 2 arrows in his hand, and says they had, quote, become mere savages. Wow. When his fellow Frenchmen finally track him down, he had totally assimilated. He was living as a Native American, which, let's be honest, was probably the only way to survive out there in the wilderness.
Okay, but here's a really interesting little detail that tells you so much about him. His French companions, the ones who were also living with the tribes, they went all in. They even got their faces tattooed in the native style. But Grolet, he refused. He let them tattoo his body, sure, but his face, that remained his own. It was this small, quiet act of defiance, a way of holding on to a little piece of who he used to be. Now that's one half of our story. The other half of this mystery, it's all about a woman of just extraordinary strength, a true matriarch. She was born right into the middle of all this colonial chaos, but she was absolutely destined to leave her own permanent mark on the land.
70,000. Just let that number sink in for a second. 70,000 acres. That's the size of the massive land grant that would one day have her name on it, Elena Gallegos. We're not talking about a small family farm here. This was basically an empire.
And talk about a tough start to life. Elena's entire childhood was just shaped by conflict and being uprooted. Can you imagine? As a literal newborn, she was a refugee, her family fleeing the violent Pueblo Revolt of 1680. She eventually comes back to New Mexico as a young girl, and then, by the time she's in her early 20s, her husband dies, leaving her a widow with a young son to raise, all on her own in this really rugged frontier. That kind of life, it just forces you to become unbelievably resilient right from the very start. So, in an era that was just completely dominated by men, did the widowed Elena just survive? No way. She thrived. Get this. In 1712, she writes this letter to the governor and she boldly petitions for her own livestock brand. And she gets it. This might have made her the very first woman in the whole region to do something like that. It was this clear, powerful statement of her independence and her incredible business sense. Okay, so we've met our two main characters. On one hand, the French survivor, and on the other, the Spanish matriarch. How in the world did these two remarkable but just completely different people come together to create something totally new? The contrast between them is just so striking, right? Look at this. On one side, you've got Santiago Gurulé, the French sailor, the survivor, a man who was literally remade physically and culturally by the wilderness. And on the other side, you have Doña Elena Gallegos, a Spanish colonist, a refugee who became this incredible landowner and entrepreneur. After her husband died, she went back to using her powerful maiden name and just built an empire completely on her own terms. Two worlds colliding. And then, in 1699, it happened. The tattooed Frenchman, who was 17 years older than her, married this young, determined Spanish colonist in Bernalillo, New Mexico. Their marriage literally wove together these two totally separate threads of colonial history.
He was this man with a crazy past etched right onto his skin, and she was this force of nature. And together they started a family line that was truly one of a kind. And this right here is what makes their story so real, so tangible for us today. The name. The Hispanic form of Jacques Grolet's name, Gurulé, it became completely unique. You won't find it anywhere else. Its very existence is a direct link back to their union. So think about that. If you ever meet someone with the last name Gurulé, you know for a fact that their entire family story starts with these two incredible people.
So let's bring this all into the present. How does this single family story from the 17th century still echo in our lives today? Well, it's all about how their family tree connects directly to a public treasure that you can actually visit. It all starts with their son, Antonio, who was born back in 1703. From him, this vast family tree just starts to grow and grow. We're talking over 300 years of the Gurulé family spreading out, putting down these deep, continuous roots right into the soil of New Mexico's history. And it all started with that one totally unlikely marriage.
And this is where it all comes together. The final beautiful connection. That land, that massive 70,000-acre grant that Elena Gallegos managed so fiercely, the very foundation of her legacy, a huge piece of it, is now a treasured public park, the Elena Gallegos Open Space. It's this place where people go hiking, they watch birds, families have picnics. It's a living, breathing link to this incredible history we've been talking about.
So what does this all mean? The story of Gurulé and Gallegos, it's just this powerful reminder, isn't it? That behind every place name you see on a map and every family name you hear, there's a real human story. A story of survival, of incredible resilience and amazing connections, just waiting for someone to uncover it. So the next time you're out and about, maybe ask yourself, what hidden histories are lying right here in my own community?